Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the BMP-2M. This is a currently 9.7 rank 6 squadron vehicle in the Russian ground tech tree. In this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about it, including its stats, how it plays. I'll go over its strengths and weaknesses, I'll give it some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation, and if I feel that this vehicle is worth grinding for, or purchasing, or simply none of the above. As always, please consider subscribing if you'd like more content like this, but without further ado, let's get into the video. So to start, I'll place its stat card here on the side of the screen. Important things to note are its overall mobility and turret traverse rate, lack of armor, and variety of powerful weapons. Now for how it plays. Put simply, the BMP-2M is an extreme case of the already extreme stereotype of the glass cannon. While the BMP-2M lacks any sort of substantial armor and can be penned by as little as an HMG in some areas, it makes up for this with very good mobility and amazing firepower. Even after being raised to 9.7 BR, the 2M is still extremely deadly and has seen little if any change in its overall potency. With this said, between its fast firing and relatively high penning 30mm autocannon and its 9M133 tandem charge ATGMs, the BMP-2M has enough firepower to kill any vehicle that it will come across, from nearly any range, be it air or ground. While the 30mm cannon really gets good with its top level APF SDS rounds, it can still pen the side armor of many vehicles with its lesser ammo belts, while the 9M133 ATGM comes stock with this vehicle, meaning that you may rely on it quite heavily when initially grinding through the vehicle, though of course the 9M133 will be a go-to regardless of how far you are through the grind. Because of these two incredible strengths, as well as with its second-gen thermal sights, the BMP-2M can be both a sniper with its ATGMs, as well as a flanker and close-quarter specialist with its 30mm cannon. You must never, however, go into a head-to-head fight and expect to win, as the BMP-2M has less than 20mm of armor essentially everywhere on the vehicle, which means that almost anything that you will fight will be able to kill you as easily as you can kill them. As such, this vehicle needs the element of surprise to be successful, of which is surprisingly easy to obtain due to the 2M's relatively low profile and fairly good maneuverability. In this regard, it can flank, base cap, scout, and even snipe, though its ATGMs are fantastic at all ranges, and can be fired rapidly, which is a great way of ensuring that you get a kill. On top of all of this, the BMP-2M has an auto-track feature that allows you to lock onto enemy aircraft and attempt to shoot them down, with ATGMs being preferred for longer ranges and the 30mm cannon cleaning up the skies at a closer range. Better still is the inclusion of the 9M133 FM3 missile, which uses a proximity fuse and has a much longer range, both of which will easily shoot down aircraft, although I personally do not use the FM3 regularly, as the standard 9M133 typically has enough range, and the auto-track function on the 2M reduces the need for a proximity fuse. Additionally, the base 9M133 ATGM will have upwards of 1200mm of armor pen at max, while the FM3 variants are essentially purely HE, which means that the FM3 will not be useful in combat against most ground vehicles that you will face. Regardless, with the exception of brawling and being a mainline tank, the BMP-2M can essentially fight any way that you want and will almost always be able to kill any enemy with ease in a number of different ways. Now with that said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses. First, for its strengths. The BMP-2M has both an extremely versatile and powerful armament. Between its APDS FS, of which is what the APF SDS round is referred to in-game, its 9M133 ATGMs, ability to auto-track enemy aircraft, its proxy fuse ATGMs, and even its roof-mounted grenade launcher, the BMP-2M is easily one of the most well-armed vehicles in War Thunder, regardless of BR. Second, it has very good maneuverability. While being outshined by similar vehicles in its class, such as the BMD-4, the BMP-2M is still a quick vehicle and will be able to flank just as easily as any other vehicle at this BR. Third, it has an excellent turret traverse rate of between 42 and 60 degrees per second, depending on crew skill. For its fourth strength, it has Gen 2 thermals, which will allow for extreme clarity at any range. Fifth, as said before, and I cannot state this enough, the auto track feature is one of this vehicle's greatest strengths, turning it into a makeshift yet extremely capable SPAA. Beyond this, the tandem charged 9M133 ATGMs can be fired up to 4 times in rapid succession before needing to reload, and they will all track at the same time. Additionally, the 9M133 ATGMs come stock with the BMP-2M, which will make the grind much easier. And finally, despite its poor armor, the front-mounted engine provides some additional level of survivability. Now with this said, let's get into its weaknesses. First, the 2M has barely any armor, being susceptible to anything more powerful than an LMG. For its second weakness, though it has a commander sight, said sight only has night vision. Third, while it is good, the 30mm cannon won't consistently pen the front of an MBT. Fourth, much like most other Russian vehicles, the ammo is concentrated at the bottom of the turret, though of course there are some top of the turret ammo reserves as well. This basically means that it is very easy to ammo rack the 2M. For its fifth weakness, it only has a 3-man crew, which further reduces survivability relative to other vehicles with larger crews. And finally, while decent, the base level ammunition for the 30mm cannon is not going to be sufficient for most frontal kills, forcing you to be able to flank around the enemy to get a kill with it. Now with that being said, let's get into how I score this vehicle. First and foremost, for armament. Is this any surprise? I give the BMP-2M a 9.5 out of 10 in this category. The BMP-2M is about as perfect as you can get in terms of firepower. Between its excellent 30mm cannon with its high fire rate and APF SDS, its 9M133 ATGMs, and even its grenade launcher and LMG, it can auto-track aircraft and destroy them with ease with either its cannon or missiles, and can easily flank and spank numerous enemies within seconds. Ultimately, at least in my experience, the grenade launcher and LMG are largely useless, but the double trouble of the cannon and missiles are more than enough to make this easily one of the deadliest vehicles in War Thunder, and is easily one of the most up-tierable, both now and in the history of the game. And you have Gen 2 thermals for a crisp view of your enemy before destroying him. Now that said, for survivability, I give it a 2 out of 10. The BMP-2M is essentially a glass cannon, as it has minimal protection versus essentially everything in game. With a maximum of 15mm of hull armor and 20mm of turret armor, this vehicle will stop almost nothing. Sans LMGs, some HMGs depending on the distance and firing angles, and will barely ricochet an extremely angled cannon shot. On the plus side, it has both ESS and smoke grenades, though the BMP-2M is limited to a maximum of 6 smoke grenades, which is somewhat substandard at this BR. You know, I might even give this a 2.25 in survivability, just because it has that engine in the front which will increase crew survivability, although just marginally. Now for mobility, I give this a 7.25 out of 10. Simply put, this is a maneuverable and quick vehicle, but it isn't going to blow anyone's socks off. It is essentially about as quick as any light tank at this BR, but falls short of faster vehicles in its class, like the BMD-4. Featuring a 24.8 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio when fully spaded, the BMP-2M fits in line with other light tanks and is very good in terms of mobility, but again, it is not a standout in this class, though it is definitely better than its predecessor, the BMP-2, as it features around 60 more horsepower. A fairly large mark against this vehicle is the mediocre reverse speed of 10 km per hour, which is a big detriment, as the 2M will need to pop in and out of cover in order to protect itself properly. Now, with that said, I added another category to the scores, and that is the stock to spaded grind, in which I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. I'm adding this section to my reviews, at least in some instances for non-premium vehicles, in order to describe the ease of the grind from stock to spaded. By the way, if you want that sort of video, I do have a stock to spaded series dedicated to just that, so check it out. Now that said, back to the review. The BMP-2M is one of the easiest vehicles to grind from stock, as it features its best ATGMs as stock weapons. As such, even though the stock autocannon shells aren't great, they're still usable, with the ATGMs being able to provide many easy kills. Further, the BMP-2M can easily get experience from killing aircraft, which makes the grind easier. Points are taken away in this because it still takes work, and the 30mm autocannon doesn't start becoming extremely effective until you unlock the APDS shells in the third row of mods. Now with that said, overall, I give the BMP-2M an 8.25 out of 10. Yes, I know, I'm giving everything outside of the survivability a much higher weight in this rating, but if you know the BMP-2M, you will know what I'm talking about. While the survivability issues are of course a problem them, the 2M easily overcomes them in most instances, and it is an incredibly powerful vehicle. Even at 9.7 BR, it can hold its own and then some. It has always been a top dog in whatever BR bracket it's been in, and I don't see that ever changing. The BMP-2M is simply that good. Now with that said, for my recommendation, should you buy or grind for this vehicle? As with any Squadron vehicle, I always recommend grinding for them first, as Squadron vehicles offer no RP and SL benefits over regular tech tree vehicles, and will thus not help the grind much. If you're looking for a vehicle to grind with, I would instead suggest the 2S38 or the Terms, though the 2S38 plays more similarly to the BMP-2M. Regardless, if you already have a lineup at or around the BMP-2M's BR, then I would suggest that it might actually be worth sinking some GE into in order to unlock. Again, on principle, I'm a bit against it because GE is always better spent on premium vehicles or a premium account, but the BMP-2M is so good that it might be an exception to that rule. Otherwise, the 2M is easily one of the most worthwhile Squadron vehicles to grind, and as a result, it easily receives my Tankenstein seal of approval. In fact, the 2M might be the best Squadron vehicle in War Thunder, and I really don't even think it's close. And that's even considering great vehicles like the Sea Harrier FRS-1, the M1A1 AIM, Leopard 2PL, T-80 UK, and more. The BMP-2M is one of those rare vehicles in War Thunder that, no matter where it's placed in terms of BR, it has always been a beast, and that makes this vehicle truly special. And you know what? Just because I might even say that overall this is an 8.5 or even an 8.75, it is that good. Now with that said, thank you all so much for watching. Please let me know what you guys thought about this video and what you think of the BMP-2M in the comments below. Please also consider liking and subscribing as well if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this in the future, or you just simply like my sultry voice. Either way, thanks again, and I will see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.